If you have a true scary story you want to send in to the channel, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. Hi, Raven. I just discovered your channel, and this experience I had at work was one of a kind, to me. I've struggled being able to find a platform, and the stories you share are incredible. Thank you. Some background. I'm a caregiver. The title is specifically Direct Care Provider for individuals with developmental disabilities. And I look after these people in homes, not called group homes, but ISLs. The most least restrictive environment possible. The extent of my care depends on the person, from complete care to simply looking out for them like they were a child, treating them with as much dignity and respect as anyone else. I love my job. I've made so many great memories with all of those that I've looked after. I get to work in a regular house instead of your standard work environment. The work is, for the most part, easy. It almost becomes a home away from home, and you get familiar with the layout of the home quickly. My 8 months working there, I swore that I had sensed or seen something always from the corner of my eye, but I never thought it could have really been a spirit. Until this night. The story happens in the first ISL I ever worked at back at 2016. I was quite new to the field, but got the hang of it easily. It was a 5-bedroom house with 2 levels. 3 bedrooms were upstairs and 2 down the hall just across from the staircase. It was an open concept floor plan. We had 4 individuals under our care, and the ratio is 2-to-1. So I always worked with someone. I was in my 8th month working this field in this house and was quite familiar with all of whom lived here and who my coworkers were. As this was a while ago, some circumstantial details are fuzzy now, but not much. This particular night, I accepted a night shift last minute as relief staff couldn't come in. These ISLs require 2 staff to be present 24/7, day and night. I'm happy to help. It's a pretty house, and I'm good at keeping myself busy with so much downtime. The only thing this company demanded is, do not fall asleep. To make sure of this, they warn us in training that house managers, sometimes directors, will enter the homes in the middle of the night to inspect and be sure that we are not sleeping. Did I mention we aren't allowed to lock the doors? Sometimes when management did this and found staff asleep, they'd go into the medicine room and take medications and promptly leave. I guess this was to teach us that someone can come in and break in and steal drugs at any moment, so be on our guard. Looking back at this now, this was a major red flag. The work environment was definitely borderline toxic, and I was dealing with a few moral dilemmas about whether I wanted to keep working there. I had witnessed a coworker screaming at an individual under our care. This is relevant. They were screaming at this person to eat their food. When the individual got up feeling anxious, getting screamed at to eat, my coworker ended up cornering them and they accidentally knocked something over and broke it. It was then marked off as a behavioral incident in documentation. Absolute broccoli salad. It was 100% staff-induced. These people are vulnerable as they cannot defend themselves. They don't have the freedoms we do as they cannot drive. We handle their medication. We help them get dressed. We bathe them. We cook them meals. I remember stepping away to go to the bathroom and crying, feeling terrible for what I had just stumbled across. Our job is to protect these people, not scream at them. I reported my coworker, and instead of getting fired like they were supposed to, they were moved to a different ISL. Great. But just my luck, this coworker was with me the night of my story. We had staffing shortages and they figured it was safe since it was night. I was job hunting at this point because I could not work for a company that was so shady. Abuse charges can blacklist you and get you into serious legal trouble. and I was scared of getting thrown under a bus, framed, just something. It was 10 p.m. All the individuals of the home were fast asleep, and my coworker was in the living room feeling ill. They were complaining of chest tightness. Great. I was in the visiting room directly across from the stairs. I was lounging on the couch after a long day and my phone watching YouTube. Night shift involved plenty of downtime, which was great. With this said, I was of sound body and mind. I had nothing in my system and it wasn't too late. I wasn't drowsy. My face was on a screen watching a top 10 video. From just the peripheral of my vision, in the dimly lit house, there was a thin young man, no older than 19, that came down the stairs. His dark hair was clean and parted to one side. As I remembered the rules, doors unlocked, managers even from other ISLs can stop by at any time, especially at night, I thought nothing of it, as they did sometimes hire people fresh out of high school as house managers. I simply assumed he was one of these managers doing an inspection. This man had come down the stairs, turned without looking, and said, "Hello," quite formally, like he just wanted to let me know he was there. Then immediately turned down the hall like he was going to check on a sleeping individual. At this point, I was thinking, oh crap, my shoes are off and I was caught looking at my phone at work. Which was silly, honestly, because nobody cared if you were on your phone at work with everyone else sleeping. Still, I scrambled to put my sore feet back into my shoes and got up to follow in case they had any questions. To my surprise, he hadn't come back from turning into the hallway. There is no back door on that side of the home, just 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. I thought to myself, maybe I missed him. Maybe he already moved to the living room and then the medicine room to inspect that. So I go and ask my coworker on the couch where the young man went, and she was confused. The back door was in the kitchen, which was visible where we were standing. The living room and kitchen were only divided by a long kitchen island counter, so if anyone had walked in, they would have definitely heard them coming in. She asked me if I was sure I saw someone, and I said yes. Both of us looked for this phantom house manager in all the bedrooms and even outside. Nobody was there. That was also when I realized that this man had walked. His steps had been silent. My coworker started laughing at that point, teasing me about seeing a ghost. I don't think she believed me. I could tell by how dismissive she was, but to this day, I swear that's what I saw. I've spoken to a few other people about my experience, and they suggested that, perhaps, this young man knew I was planning on leaving soon and wanted to make his presence known before I left. I think he knew something I didn't yet, but knew that I could see him if he wanted me to. I've now since changed companies, and the environment here is so much better. No toxic micromanaging, no spontaneous visits in the middle of the night or possible medication theft, no abuse, or at least none that I've witnessed. This wasn't my first encounter seeing or sensing a ghost, but it was the most visual experience I ever had. Fast forward to present day, I work every Saturday overnight at this new company and at the same ISL, and have been there since 2017. Every now and then I've caught something or someone moving in the corner of my eye. Sometimes I hear footsteps when everyone is asleep. This is a house, not an apartment, so it can't be a neighbor. Another ISL that I visited, I swear the basement is haunted. The presence wasn't as friendly, so I didn't stay there long. You get this sense, this feeling, you know? Also, one thing I want to mention is that I'm a school bus driver. In 2022, the morning after my father died, I briefly saw a shadow the shape of a man in my passenger mirror. It was sitting in a seat, but then vanished in the blink of an eye. I hadn't checked my phone yet to hear the voicemail message from my stepmother telling me he'd passed. He was 58 and died of Alzheimer's. Way too young. I had lost my mom back in 2014, so I was officially parentless at 30. My dad loved watching ghost story shows on TV, so of course he had to mess with me one last time. I don't know why these little encounters happen. I'm not exactly a medium. I get the occasional flash image in my head, or sometimes I feel or hear a message that nearly feels telepathic. My dad wasn't pleased when I told my husband how I felt, how he was such a man-child in life. He was. I was woken from a dead sleep from someone giving me some choice words, but that could have been a dream. It just hits me without notice and sometimes at random while awake. And I know it's not coming from me, but from somewhere or someone else. I apologize. This is becoming a rambling session, but I'm just trying to make sense of it all. Maybe this man I legit saw knew that I could see, and just wanted to open my eyes. For whatever reason why, I'm thankful. I've endured a lot of loss, and I'm going to see more of it in days to come. It makes me feel more connected to those I've lost, knowing that they aren't far away. Hey Raven, this is my second story that I'm sharing. This is a few stories about a single entity, so to begin, this is part my story, part my aunt's, and part my cousin's. So, in the summers, my sister and I would spend a month or so at my aunt's house in West Virginia. It was an old house, had an old creepy barn and a little building that my aunt used for her grooming room. So these all happened between my ages of 10 to 15. The house's previous owner was a woman named Dice Boggs. Story had it that she'd passed in the small building that my aunt used, which was upstairs, where apparently her bed was moved to near the end of her life. The crazy thing was, Dice had the same last name as my aunt and uncle, but they didn't know her. So, from my own experience, it was nighttime, and we were just hanging out in a dining room, my sister and I. And we suddenly heard an old record player start up with gospel music. My aunt didn't have a record player. So my sister and I ran to my aunt, and she told us if we looked out at the front porch, we would see the rocking chair swaying back and forth. And she was right. Apparently, Dice liked to turn her old gospel music on and listen to it from the front porch in her rocking chair. No harm, right? My aunt told me about an experience or two that she'd had with her. The first being she had gone up and cleaned her room, moved some things around, and when she went to sit downstairs to relax, she heard what sounded like things being dragged across the floor, like someone was moving things. She went upstairs, and nothing was moved. So, at night, she was trying to sleep, and suddenly she felt like she was being watched. She opened her eyes and sees a woman just floating at the end of her bed. She grabs the blanket, throws it over her head, and screams, "Go away, Dice!" She mustered the courage to peek out her blankets, and much to her comfort, Dice was gone. My cousin told me about his encounter where he was in his room trying to sleep when he looked at the edge of his bed and Miss Dice was sitting there, looking like she was babbling away with some story, although he couldn't hear anything coming from her mouth. He got annoyed and decided to tell her to go away, Dice, I'm trying to sleep, and she'd disappear. While none of those particular experiences seem bad, but almost sweet, there were times that we had scary things happen in that house, such as loud work boots pounding down the stairs in the mornings, things being lifted up and dropped in the kitchen, doors being locked with no one inside, and my sister being grabbed from behind. There were also unexplained deaths to animals on the land, one being in the barn. Thankfully, no one lives there anymore, but summers there were always an interesting and sometimes scary time. I have many more experiences from my life, which I'll save for another time. I'm not sure what to put this under, but I think it would probably relate more to the paranormal, parallel universe, or doppelgangers. About 4 to 6 months ago, I walked into a McDonald's in Augusta, Kansas, and saw a coworker that I had not seen in 2 or 3 years. I asked her how she was, and she told me that she was door dashing. And she told me that she had been door dashing for a few months in Augusta. She told me that she had reached platinum status, which is the higher level, where you get more or better tips. She specifically said that she doesn't mind taking the no-tip orders, and I thought, I don't take people's orders who don't tip. We talked for a few minutes, and I believe she had a McDonald's delivery sack in which a customer's order was placed into. As she was leaving, I told her goodbye and saw her walk out the door. Just a few days back, my coworker, who supposedly was a DoorDasher, sent me a couple of photos from Baltimore, Maryland, and one from Washington, D.C. She sent me a really cool picture of a 500-foot-tall building in Baltimore on Messenger. I asked her how she was doing, and she was doing fine. I told her that I had finally reached platinum status from DoorDashing, and she asked me what that was. I told her, "Don't you DoorDash in Augusta?" And she said that she has never DoorDashed in her life. Perplexed, I asked, "Don't you remember seeing me in McDonald's in Augusta several months back?" And she said that she hasn't been in a McDonald's or been to Augusta in like a year and a half. I was dumbfounded, and I thought that if that wasn't my ex-coworker I spoke to several months ago at the Augusta McDonald's, then who the hell was that? Was it like her doppelganger that works as a DoorDasher in a parallel universe? Or a different timeline? It really blew my mind, and I'm totally weirded out about it. Hi, Raven. I've been listening to your stories for some time now, and I feel like it's time to share my own. I'll start by saying that my family owns a cabin in the mountains in California. This cabin is not necessarily old, or remote, for that matter, because it is surrounded by other cabins as well. I will say, however, that there are times when no neighbors are up there, and it can seem a little eerie and intimidating to be there alone. Now, to the main story. The first incident started when I thought my bedroom at the cabin was haunted. I shared this room with my twin brother, but after these events, I admittedly have chosen to never go in there anymore because it gives me the creeps. When I think about all the things that happened in that room, the first thing I remember are my nightmares. For context, I rarely get nightmares, and when I do, I'm never scared until I wake up and realize what was happening was weird or creepy. Because, and I feel like some of you can relate to this, when you're dreaming, you don't really question what's happening. You just accept it, if that makes sense. One night, I was trying to sleep in my room at the cabin. My brother was already asleep, my parents as well. This usually seemed to be the case because whenever I tried to go to sleep there, it always felt like something was watching me. I always felt unnerved. Eventually, I did fall asleep and had a terrifying dream. In this dream, I was surrounded by pitch-black darkness. I was looking around to try and make out if I could see anything else, when I spotted a figure turned away from me, some number of feet in front of me. They had a slender build with long black hair and pale skin, and some sort of garment that was off-white. For some reason, even though there wasn't any light source, at least that I could make out, this figure was completely visible. Now, because they were the only one or thing that I could see in this space of darkness, naturally yet cautiously I walked up to the figure. I reached my hand out with the intention of tapping them on the shoulder to grab their attention, yet the minute I reached out, the figure whipped around to face me while they screeched an ear-piercing scream right in my face. This dream startled me awake, and I noticed that my heart felt like it was beating out of my chest. This would not necessarily be odd because it's just a dream, right? Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the last dream that I had with this figure. My second dream happened probably a few years after this. I had dreamt that I was in a college dorm. At the time I had this dream, I was in middle school, and all of a sudden every building started panicking and scrambling to get out of the way. I didn't know what was happening until somebody yelled, "She's coming!" And I saw in the distance the same figure, now larger than in my previous dream, sprinting towards me while clawing everyone in its way and chasing after the other people there. Without getting too graphic, it was trying to harm and kill everyone in the building. I ran back into my dorm and hid under a desk, but the figure came into my room and attacked my roommates. And then it turned to look at me and I woke up. These dreams really stuck with me because I never dreamed of anything violent like this. Usually when I dream, it's people who I know in real life. Yet, in these dreams, I didn't know anyone. Also, I don't know anyone in real life that looks like that figure. I will say that in both dreams, it seemed female. Not in the way that it looked, but it just gave off a kind of vibe that it was. Sorry, I know that's really vague. The next incident was definitely a bigger deal to me. It was coincidentally Christmas Eve at my cabin. I was trying to sleep in my bottom bunk while my brother was up top. I was facing the wall, my back was turned towards the middle of the room. It must have been about 12 in the morning at least, when all of a sudden I felt someone press their hand against my lower back. It didn't feel evil or like it had bad intentions. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I felt like if I saw the face of whomever or whatever was doing this, it would be smiling peacefully looking down at me in adoration. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what it felt like. Anyways, I was too scared to turn around or say anything because I felt like if I did, it would be an acknowledgement that I knew that the being was there. And I was scared that if I said anything, it would want to interact with me further, and I definitely did not want that. I know what most of you must be thinking. It's probably just sleep paralysis or a bad dream, but I have to say, I have never had sleep paralysis before or since that event. I felt like I could definitely move if I chose to. The difference was that I was too scared to move, not that I felt like I was paralyzed. Also, I'm 100% sure that I was awake. I know when I'm dreaming, okay? I digress. While this was happening, my heart was beating so fast, and I could feel the sweat dripping down my face, and I wanted to cry out of fear, but like I mentioned earlier, I didn't want the being to realize I was awake. Eventually, after trying to stay still, I just wound up falling asleep somehow. I managed to tell my whole family this in the morning, and none of them took me seriously at all. After that event, they have always teased me about how I won't go into the haunted room and such. Specifically, my mom. Here's where it gets really weird. Years after this event, now I'm in high school, my mom had come back from staying at the cabin with my dad. And she came up to me and told me, "Hey, Addy, I have to admit something to you." "Yeah," I said, already intrigued. "While me and your dad were at the cabin at night, I woke up to the feeling of someone pressing on my lower back." I was definitely skeptical of my mother saying this because she has been known to try and trick or scare the rest of our family as pranks, but I could tell that there was sincerity in her voice. Still, I asked her, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, it actually really freaked me out after that. Remember, sweetie?" And she turned to my dad. "Yep, I do," he said simply. Before I could even say, "I told you so," my twin brother chimed in. "Oh yeah," he said excitedly as if he had just remembered something. "That happened to me a while back as well. I woke up and I felt like someone was touching me." I was definitely in shock and disbelief with this new discovery, but I was also pretty upset that no one believed me up until now. I find it weird though that my brother and mom had this happen while they were asleep, and woke up to it. But for some reason I was wide awake and was trying to go to sleep when my experience took place. I'm not sure what to make of this story, but I have told my close friends among other people, and I've gotten mixed responses. I also forgot to mention that this kind of creeped me out because it meant that it wasn't just my room that had some weird happenings in it. I asked one of my friends, and she thinks that my cabin might be haunted by an upset Native American spirit because the land of my cabin used to be native land, and maybe it's upset because it's been taken away. I'm not really sure. I'm honestly open to anything. As a side note, I kind of want to say that I feel like there are two beings there, one with bad intentions and one with good. My mom doesn't think that spirits can enter dreams, but to be honest, I sort of do. I'm just not really sure what to make of this or why this happened. In all honesty, it could just be a bunch of strange coincidences. There are some other things that I didn't mention before, like hearing footsteps when no one else was awake, or hearing little noises inside the walls. But I feel like that is less significant than what I already said. Anyways, thanks for considering this story, and I'm sorry that it's kind of all over the place. So, this story that I'm telling you just happened. I just came back from vacation, and it is my first day back. I'm an EVS/housekeeper, and my unit that I work in is the Neuro ICU housekeeping. I clean the rooms when patients are occupying them, or when they leave, and sometimes the OR rooms, where they're doing surgeries. But anyway, I've always been sensitive to the paranormal, and I always attract the weirdos. I'm not sure why, but I never have a dull moment because something is always happening. But yesterday I just came back from vacation, and it's my first day back, and I was kind of excited as I missed working. I get to my first room. The patient is in the room, so all I have to do is take the trash out and make sure they have soap, toilet paper, etc. I mop the floors every day and wipe down the rails of the beds. I walk in and I see an old, frail lady with a tube down her throat and wrist restraints. Some patients need them because they get violent, or they are a hazard to themselves while doped out on painkillers. I softly knock and introduce myself. "Housekeeping, my name is Whitney. I'm going to tidy up your room for you today." Even though she was in a coma, I still like to introduce myself because they can still hear you. I finished cleaning and stocking up her rooms, so I started mopping. I got close to her bed to mop under her bed, and she pulled her hand out of the restraint and tried to grab me. It scared me so bad that I jumped. Her monitors started to beep really fast, and I started to hear a really low, deep gargling or growl coming from this lady. The nurses came in to check her out to make sure she was okay, strapped her hand back down and left while I finished up fast and went on with my business to the other rooms. During my shifts, when I would walk past her room, I could feel this eeriness, and I felt super unsettled, and you could hear the low gargling. Sometimes people who are connected to tubes will make weird noises, but this one just felt different. The next day, which is the day that I'm writing this, the same day, something really unsettling happened. I'm hiding in my janitor's closet trying to settle myself down as I just really want to go home. But I walked to her room with my janitor cart and I stood there for a bit trying to get enough courage to go in, but something is telling me to stop. But I can get a write-up if I don't clean every room on my list. I took a deep breath and walked in, said housekeeping, and started taking her trash out, keeping my eyes low and not looking at her face. But I can see that she's still in restraints and still in a coma with a tube in her throat. Where her main trash can is, I have to turn my back towards her because it's right against her main door, but since it's the ICU doors, they're all glass. So I was replacing the bag when I looked up and saw my reflection. She was standing right behind me. I jumped, turning around screaming. She had somehow pulled the tube out of her throat without gagging, making any noise, and/or setting off the monitors that are hooked up to her. She pulled out the IV and somehow got out of her restraints. I ran out of the room to the nurse's station, and this patient freaking followed me out of her room and was whispering my name. I cannot get her voice out of my head. It was super low and raspy. It sounded like something that would come out of a demon in a scary movie, not this tiny old lady. The nurses that were at the station jumped up, grabbing her and asking her questions while ushering her back to her room. We're all stumped how she did this, as it just doesn't make sense. Some of the nurses blamed me for helping her out, but at the same time, I was only in there for not even 5 minutes, and plus they could see me through the glass doors. I went to lunch, unable to eat, of course. When I came back, she was gone. The old lady was gone. I asked where the patient in 301 went, and their eyes widened, and we started searching for her before calling security. We looked in all the patient rooms, bathrooms, utility rooms, in the units, when I had a feeling to look in my janitor's closet. The only way to open this door is to have a key, which only the housekeepers have, and this door is kind of broken. So when you open it, it's super loud and makes a loud banging noise. I opened my janitor closet, and there she was, using the mop sink. I yelled for the nurses. We ended up cleaning my mop sink, and she was sent to a different unit. I'm not sure which, and I wasn't going to really ask, but no one knows how this old lady opened the door without a key, and how she opened it without making the banging noise. The door is super heavy. I'm 5'10" and 150 pounds, and I struggled to push this door open. So, how did this tiny 5-foot woman open this door? Anyway, I'm just rambling on. Thank you for telling my story, and remember that you matter and you are important. And just be cautious in your workplace and at home. There are both good and crazy people out there. So, one time, when I was like 5, this all happened. I was at my grandma's house, and my grandma, my sister, and my papa made a campfire. I was sleeping when I woke up and started crying and screaming for my grandmother because I didn't know where she was. Then, my sister and grandma came to get me from the porch. Once they got me, we went to the porch stairs, and we all saw a figure as it smacked the barbecue. It was not a windy night, so I don't know what moved my grandma's smoke box, but it definitely moved. So that, my friends, was a collection of some strange and scary stories. This could almost have been a paranormal collection, but it's not because I have another one of those coming next week. I have... Hang on, let me open the calendar, let me stall while it opens. How you doing? I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. Voice is kind of coming back to me. Still having some minor issues, but nothing too terrible, you know? Just scratchiness sometimes. Okay, it loaded. Next week I have 2 paranormal videos coming, actually. So, there's that. Hopefully y'all are looking for some paranormal stories. The schedule had to be moved some because some things happened, namely COVID and my voice issues. So things had to get moved, and it's a disaster, and we're just throwing things everywhere. Here, there, everywhere. Where, there, here, everywhere. Anyways, yeah, not irrelevant. This was a collection of strange and scary stories, and hopefully you specifically, enjoyed it. If you did, please do hit that like button. Big old thumbs up under the video. And whenever I said to hit the like button if you're on PC, it should have sparkled all rainbowy. Rainbowy? What am I trying to say here? It should have sparkled. Maybe not. It only does it once, and not always. Hopefully it did it for you. Yeah. And if you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button, as that would be just fantastic. You can also leave me a comment down below the video letting me know your thoughts, how you're doing, how things are going, so forth and so on. And you can join memberships or Patreon to get early access to content like this. Do a super thanks, which is a tip to the channel, never expected, always appreciated, or listen to the podcast on other platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, Audible, so forth and so on. You can do a lot of things, is my point. So, hopefully you all enjoy my podcast, my stuff. Yeah. Hopefully you're also having a gorgeous day. Hopefully I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, that you are valid, that you are important, that you're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love and sleep well.